Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the All Saints podcast. Those of you who are watching on video can see I've got our old friend, your pastor, Jeff Shaw, with me today. Great to have you with us, Jeff.
Great to be here once again.
And this week's podcast, I wanted to have a conversation with you about a string of, I thought, really insightful and thought-provoking comments and one-liners on the All Saints men's group chat that erupted and blossomed wonderfully last Sunday afternoon. Do you check the All Saints group chat regularly, Jeff?
I do. I've actually gotten more regular about checking it, so don't take my absence of commenting as my eyes aren't on it. My eyes are on it.
You're stalking, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and I guess I'm going to gain a reputation for only posting when I need something. Right? I need some volunteers to help me with this or that or the other at the church. I do listen. Sometimes I'm probably always a little behind, which is one of the reasons I don't think I chime in more, because it's like, okay, we've moved on to something else that's going to look ridiculous. That's right.
If you kind of flag a post from 3 days ago.
Yeah.
But the stalking thing is like, it's entirely in jest because actually what it is, I mean, I'm really encouraged by the kind of stuff that I read you guys talking about most of the time, neither hear or understand.
Yep.
Because and a lot of the time it's just helpful because as a pastor, it's just, you guys are talking about stuff and we just want to interact with you about it. And I was this close to actually posting a bunch of stuff on Sunday evening. And I thought, no, you know what? This might be helpful just to hear your thoughts about it, Pastor Shaw. Also to talk about it at a bit of length, maybe share the ideas with other people as well. So hopefully this can continue the conversation. And what happened was, so one of our members, and I'm not going to name any names, okay? I mean, some of you know who you are.
Call you out.
Call you out. You won't do this again. Gents, aside from your reading and exercise, what hobbies do you partake in to help relieve stress in whatever free time you have?
There's some assumptions right there.
There's some assumptions about
reading and exercise.
Reading it. So, I mean, and I just want to walk through some of these comments. So, I mean, the first thought is, okay, relieving stress, and apart from reading and exercise and free time. So
that's another assumption.
Yeah, that's another assumption, which somebody else picked up a second or so later. But I think it's a really great question because truth is, everybody will have jobs that ought to be, or everyone ought to have jobs that are exhausting, right? I mean, because we've talked a fair amount this last year about work and about giving ourselves wholeheartedly to our work. And so some of you are in physically demanding jobs. Some of you have got vocations which are mentally demanding, and you come home in the evening and you might have physically the caffeine jitters, but mentally you're just completely washed out and unable to sustain a coherent conversation. So there are different forms of stress, even when things are going well. And then there is always, sometimes there's the emotional tension that builds up, there's the frustration and so on. So reading and exercise, I just thought that was an interesting place to start. Do you want to share any thoughts about that, Pastor Shaw?
Yeah, well, and do what I say and not what I know. As it, obviously, I honestly have not been working out a lot lately, and that's actually something that I know it's almost a cliche to in the new year, focus on your,
make some resolutions,
getting back into shape. But that's something that Brianne and I, hopefully my kids won't watch the podcast and know that one of their Christmas presents that's coming is that we're going to just get a family membership to the Y, because, it's a great way to exercise and spend time with the family together. And we're just all a little too sedentary right now. I mean, I've got a couple Christmases ago, I got a set of weights, and I have my seasons where I get back on the horse and fall back off the wagon, so to speak, in terms of exercise. But I do know that every time I'm involved in exercise, it's really invigorating in terms of, I mean, I sleep better. Even I concentrate better in my work and work harder. And
I think that's probably I think lots of people have observed. There were a couple of other comments later in the chat along the lines of lift things.
Yes.
And the thing I found interesting.
Men should lift things.
Men should lift things.
Yes, they should lift things.
Well, there's this a correlation between, I find in my own just exercise and routines and everything else. There's a correlation between the level of mental strain I feel and how much exercise I'm getting. And my temptation is to think that the way the correlation works is when I'm really busy, I don't have time for exercise. When I'm really busy, I'm more stressed because of the busyness.
Right.
And I wonder, I mean, maybe there's some of that, but maybe it's actually when I don't make time for exercise, I get more exhausted, get more stressed, don't sleep so well. And there's that kind of vicious circle. And obviously everyone knows that when you've got hard deadlines and you're running up against 12 or 14-hour days and you get home at 9 in the evening, it's like you really just, you don't want to go to the gym then.
Right.
So sometimes it works that way. But I wonder if actually, as much of the time, it's the failure to make time for physical activity of whatever kind
Right.
that contributes to the stress and the lack of sleep and the lack of productivity.
I think that's probably true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was challenged by my brother-in-law of all people, is Nicole's sister's husband, who's a very busy GP, a general practitioner, lives in England, obviously. And I was talking to him about, oh yeah, it's sometimes hard to get to the gym and so on and so forth. And he just said it straight. He said, well, look, if you want to do it, you'll make time for it. And he is a serious runner and cyclist. So he'll cycle, hundreds of miles a week. Right. And run dozens of miles a week, mostly before work. He'll just get up and do it. And I know people in the congregation at All Saints who do, who for whom that's just what they need to do, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and I think especially for hey, if you've got a job that requires a lot of physical exertion, you might get away with not exercising. But if you've got a job like I do, and there's a lot of people like us who have desk jobs and email jobs and pastoral job, interacting with people. It's really easy to. Yeah.
We are not built to spend our entire lives either asleep or sitting down.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's something I have touched on before in relation to mental health. And there's a podcast out there and a men's discipleship breakfast recording about this. But God has built us so that we will function well when our lives contain a certain cluster of different kinds of food and rest and sleep and activity, as well as mental work. And for those of us who are blessed to have a job that doesn't involve getting out of an air-conditioned office, we have to work to get the requisite calorie burn during the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the earliest feedback, second and third comments in this chain, there's like 2 or 3 comments further down. There are 1 or 2 things I'm not going to read out, but anyway, build things, somebody said. And I really like that because because in truth, it reflected one of the things that I find enjoyment in doing.
Yeah.
But I think there's a reason for that. Yeah. Well, and here's the reason why. And this slightly sparks off your comment a moment ago about if you have a job that involves a lot of physical work, you may not need to make such an effort to get physical work, workouts in the gym or running or whatever. Building things, I actually like being creative with doing wood turning, carpentry. I'm not very good, but I enjoy doing it. And I think the reason is because I spend all day using my brain, basically. It's either talking to people or reading books or praying with people. It's mentally demanding. And so when I get home, actually, for me, it's a real effort to read. I don't read at home as much as I used to in years past.
But you read a lot at work as well. And so
I'm reading really tons of stuff here.
Right.
But I do want to do something creative. So I realized years ago, I started making baking bread, and I enjoyed it. And I couldn't really figure out why until I realized not only that it kind of tastes nice, but it gives you a creative and mentally absorbing outlet that is not bookish.
Yep.
And I don't know whether that's something you've found over the years.
Well, and I don't think I'm as creative as you in terms of I've never tried to make bread from scratch, and I don't make bowls from logs. But what I do enjoy a great deal is fixing things. Right. And even just the very simple tasks of tomorrow, I know what I'm doing most of the day. Yard work. Leaves are piling up, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. Maybe I complained on the way out the door to my wife that, look at all those leaves. I'm going to have to get to those tomorrow. But I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because I know it's going to be a perfect autumn day. I'm going to be not in the office, and I'm going to be out there with my son. Yeah. And we're going to be gathering up all those leaves and maybe maybe burning leaves. My neighbor's got some
Yeah.
huge 55-gallon drums, and they
Yeah, if we see the sirens coming
Yeah,
around
exactly.
with the billows of black smoke, we'll know where they're coming to, right? But you just dropped something in there which I think is really significant. That you said with my son.
Yeah.
So Adam's got. Is it Adam or Johnny?
It's Adam who I was referring
Adam,
to.
you're referring to, and Johnny, and maybe
so
Emmett's going to be
13. I mean, Adam's 13, so
Yeah.
he needs to be out there. Johnny, you have to
Coax
teach
him.
and train Johnny, you
Yeah,
know,
and-
to stay focused. But yeah, he
and Emmett can
likes
kick
to
the leaves around for
Yeah,
you.
that's right, Emmett. We're just
Yeah.
trying to fix what he's.
But there's an
messing
important
up.
point there. One of the guys later said, and I can't find the exact quote. Let me just try and find it because it's really One of the guys said, "It's all as kid integrated as possible."
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that
Yeah.
was a really, really helpful insight, and one that, I mean, just you talk about that. How do you turn a job like, you know, you've got to clear up the yard for the winter before it starts raining, and before if it's going to get really wet, it's going to
Right.
be hard to do that. How do you turn that into something that's really productive and positive? You make it relational, right?
Right. Your sons want to work. They do. They want to work with you.
Right.
They,
right.
I mean,
if you're doing
just
your
all
job
you
well.
have to do is remember how it was when you wanted to work with your father, right? When he taught you how to work on your car, right? Or just brought you alongside him to say, "Hey, we're going to go do this and chop wood or whatever it is." I mean,
yeah.
and they feel like men. They feel like they're doing what God called them to do when they build a fire. Or,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, you know, I want to encourage both the dads and the young boys actually to self-consciously embrace that. I think sometimes what can happen, I know this myself, sometimes what can happen is you get so wrapped up in the task of, I've got to get this work done, that inevitably, especially if you've got younger kids, having them along does slow you down. And sometimes I've been guilty of this, I know. It's just quicker to do it yourself.
yeah.
And what a tragedy to miss that opportunity to actually build those relationships in that kind of constructive way with your children, and especially dads with your sons, to show them those kind of responsibilities.
Yeah. I was recently convicted that I won't name names either, but I got an invite from somebody in the church say, "Hey, I got a job for your son, you know, to do." And I went home, I talked to Brianne, and I got back to that person. I said, "You know, I need to do a little more with him. Like, I don't want you to employ him yet. He's not quite ready, but it's my responsibility to get him up to that level, because it's not my responsibility to just hand him off to somebody else as a role model and say, you know, you train my son how to work hard. No, I need to train him how to work hard. And actually, he'll really enjoy it too.
Right.
He'll get that great sense of satisfaction out of being really tired at the end of the day and looking back and going, look what I did.
Yeah.
You know,
look at that beautiful leaf-free lawn.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that strikes me about this kid-focused piece is, truth is, you are not going to have as much free time as you once did once you have children. I mean, one of the guys, one of the earlier comments on this was, "What is this free time concept you speak of?" And I won't tell you who said it, but another little wise one-liner from a father of two children. And there is some expectation adjustment, I think, that new fathers need to embrace, right?
Right.
Maybe you really like golf.
I used to play it weekly. I played golf
when you were a single
weekly,
guy.
When I was a single guy.
Right. And then you got married, and it's like,
okay, yeah.
Well, maybe I can play
maybe
occasionally.
I can play some with some guys,
Right.
but and then I had kids, and I'm like, okay, I play at golf tournaments,
right,
you know, for charity or something, right? When I get an invitation for that. Skiing, I used to ski.
Really?
Yeah, I loved skiing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you talk about unwinding, and it's physical, and it's you're in God's creation, and it's just one of the most
beautiful,
pleasant.
And you live in California, and it's like,
but you're young, you know, you got disposable income, all these kinds of things, and then you get married and you look at skiing, and it's usually out of range, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's
like, we're going to find different ways.
Yeah, it's time consuming.
Family membership at the Y. That's where it's at now. You know.
Yeah. Well, I remember this very distinctly when we were in London, and this is way back. As a kid, growing up, I was a soccer player. I used to love soccer. I played a little bit of other things. I played rugby. played cricket,
Mm-hmm.
but I was best at soccer and I loved it. And Ben took him along to a soccer club nearby, and he did it for a few years when he was 6, 7, 8 years old.
Right.
And I think he kind of liked it. He didn't go wild for it, but he liked it. And then his uncle, the same uncle actually I mentioned earlier, who's the athlete, gave him a cricket bat for his birthday over Christmas one year, and he just totally fell in love with cricket. And it was just a really fascinating kind of decision point for me, because I had previously done a little bit of soccer. Like I did play on Saturday mornings when I was at seminary, like a few times a year or something.
Right.
But I realized, like, if I want to spend time with my son as he's growing up, clearly he doesn't want to play soccer. He wants to play cricket. My last cricket experience before that was getting hit in the face by a cricket ball that nearly knocked me unconscious. Right. So you can imagine my enthusiasm.
To get back into that.
Can't wait to get back into that. Yeah. And I think that's something, there are lots of things I've not done right in this whole domain of leisure with my family, but I'm very glad of the decision that I made at that point, which was, in effect, if you've got children, you have to shape your leisure around them.
Right.
And for a lot of young dads, I think that comes as a surprise and even a source of resentment. And they don't talk it through with their wives. And their wives are feeling like, well, I don't want to stop him doing what he likes to do. But really what's happened is the husband and father has not embraced the responsibility of fatherhood by thinking, no, maybe I get to play golf when I retire. That's fine. Or maybe I play once every 6 or 8 weeks, or I play in tournaments, but I don't get to play twice a week now.
Right.
That's like half a day each time. It's just.
I know I should savor every moment I have of this, because who knows, Emmett may be the last, Emmett still at the end, when I come home at the end of the day, he yells, "Daddy's home." We have a little ding, ding, ding that goes off at the front door when the front door opens.
Right.
And he yells, "Daddy's home." And he runs to me and he hugs me. And one of the best things to do with him right in that moment is roughhouse.
Wrestle with him.
He just loves, and that is formational.
Yeah.
I think for sons too, they want that interaction and that, it's just play. It's just tickling and wrestling and fighting and,
just there's an element, isn't there, where, and I think this is probably particularly for pastors who have a lot of interaction with other people and their children, but I think it goes broader than that. To make your children know that they are special to you.
Yeah.
You don't wrestle on the floor with other people's kids, right?
No.
Please don't.
If you see me doing that, stop me.
Yeah, stop you. But there is something that creates a kind of specialness of relationship in the way that the way that you hug your daughters and the way that you roughhouse with your sons, and yeah, I like that. I like that. I want to jump back into a few of these because there were some really helpful comments here. Where were we?
Yeah, and I tell you, I was really impressed with what some of our guys are up to.
I mean, one guy's photography, exercise again. There are a couple of people, and we talked about this beforehand. Pro gamer. Somebody else said a little bit of gaming with friends. I'm probably less enthusiastic about that. It's not that I want to say never.
Yeah.
We talked about this. Just talk about your thoughts on of playing computer games sort of
our
thing.
Kids, we do allow our kids to play some video games, but they're on a timer.
Right.
Because we know, we know how addictive this is. I've even, I can remember that for a very short period of time, I was kind of, after the whole gaming thing, I had an original Atari when I was a kid. Yeah. But then after that, I didn't really have anything. I remember 9th grade, I had a good friend who remember those keys they had for the arcade games? Remember arcade games? Right. And then some guy, he worked at an arcade and he had the key, and
so you could just go and play.
Yeah. So that was probably stealing, but I didn't even think about it when I was in 9th grade and hanging out with my best friend.
So while we're on the subject of things to do.
No, but where I was going with all of that is, I know it just can suck up your time and just be a total waste of time. We do allow our kids to play some video games, but we put a timer on and say, that's it. And we want them also to play as much as possible games together.
Yeah.
So that they're not just playing by themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think obviously it's it's not on par with other activities. It's just
Well, it's worth saying a word or two about that, because it can just sound like a bit of a boomer trope to be saying, "Oh, don't play
Sure.
computer games."
Yep.
But
I'm not a boomer, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer. Like
I am
you.
too.
Yeah, just
we're,
about.
We're
right?
Xers.
Yeah, Xers.
We're cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had shell suits when we were teenagers. Do you have one of those?
Shell suits.
Yeah,
What's a shell suit?
Oh my goodness, you should have been in Britain. Anyway, let's not talk about that.
All
right. The gaming thing, I think I get it. I mean, I didn't have one of those Atari things with a cartridge. I actually had an Atari computer that you could program, and I used to kind of program games and play. You used to have to get a tape and wait 10 minutes for it to beep and broadcast you, and then you could play. I don't think that was necessarily a great use of time, but it's worth thinking why it's not. And there's a whole cluster of things to talk about here, but it's disembodied. It's a time vortex, and it doesn't really get you relationally engaged with people and actual created things. It is an artificial and constructed world, however real it is, and whatever the game is, right? It becomes a diversion from people in the same kind of way that social media relationships, scare quotes, do.
Right.
We actually find that we know people less, and there's a bunch of stuff to talk about there. I don't think I'd want to say about adults.
It does prolong adolescence too, to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be too harsh, but because I wouldn't point fingers, at adults playing some games. I get that decompressing and but yeah, I mean, it can just, and going back to this, if you're a father and you got kids and you're playing video games too much, obviously, you're doing that on your own.
Right.
Well, maybe not obviously, but you're probably doing it on your own. And
yeah.
It's valuable family time.
I think I can see it just about, but as in the sense that I can see a space for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I just have a hard time imagining many things that it's better than. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to become a kind of a church full of legalists who have these really super simplistic metrics by which we measure maturity in household context. And a guy who plays computer games is just on a lower rung. We don't want to say that. I guess I just want to flip it around and ask the question in a positive way, especially for men who are fathers and husbands for that matter. What's the best thing you could do?
Yeah.
I would be surprised if there's many times when the best thing you can do is to be absorbed in another world like that. Even if you were the super disciplined kind of guy who could just play for half an hour, decompress, when the kids are already in bed and your wife's doing something else,
Yep.
I can just about see it, but I can. It's much easier for me to imagine other things that are more productive in just about every way.
Right. I'll admit my wife is much better about this than I am, but since we're talking about playing games, one of the things she loves to take the initiative on is playing games with the older kids, as in playing dominoes. Board games, Mexican trained dominoes, or cards. The kids are learning cards, and I think that's great. That's really interactive. You see their personality, come out, and they're relating to each other. Yes. Sometimes not always perfectly,
but those are the interesting games, aren't they? Where the game becomes a platform for the expression of personality.
Yeah.
Like chess is like that. And this is not a plug for chess, but card games are like this. Where you suddenly realize, especially if you're playing card games, whether you're playing with a partner like bridge. I've never played bridge, but you can play games where
you get to know your partner.
Yeah. You start, I see what you're doing. And there is that kind of, Monopoly, we found this as well. That Monopoly is a place where people's personalities really show through. Not always the best bits of people's personalities. Yeah. We used to play that a little bit.
I'm going to teach my kids euchre.
What's that?
Euchre. It's like euchre. A really dumbed down bridge.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Jenga with your kids?
Yeah.
Jenga reveals the personalities of kids.
Yeah.
So because you've got some who are super cautious and really want to try and preserve the shape of this tower, and other people who will deliberately try to yank the piece out as fast
Yeah,
as they
they
can,
love,
or they'll
actually, they don't
try and
mind
make it
losing.
as unstable as
Yes,
possible
yes.
by removing 2 at the bottom.
That'd be Tatum.
Yeah, I wonder who that would be. All right, so what else we got here? We got a couple of other thoughts. I mean, I saw one guy. It was just fascinating, and this was, again, quite insightful, I thought. I have times when I let my mind unwind, sitting on the patio, taking a walk.
Taking a bath.
Sleeping,
Didn't he say
yeah.
a bath?
I wasn't going to mention
I remember
that.
that. Oh, you haven't?
Hot and cold baths. I'm not sure it's a stress reliever, but some of my best ideas or clearest moments of thought come when I step away from it all. I mean, the interesting thing here is that there is a ton of neuropsych research on this about, firstly, about the finite capacity of the human mind within a given time. You can't actually work at peak intensity for 12 hours. If you're really grinding it out with something demanding, you may have 3 or 4 hours cognitive high level work, and then you have to step away, or you have to do something which is more mechanical, answering 50 emails, whatever it is. But also just the giving yourself time to unwind mentally. This doesn't look like a guy who's taking a walk looking at Facebook as he's walking along. It looks like he's actually decompressing and unwinding. And one of the best books I've read on that by Adam Gazzaley, I forget the name of it, but it's a very good book about the way in which our minds work or don't work when we're compressing them full of things all the time. It just makes the point that in the past, we had lots of natural mental downtime.
Right.
And if you're standing in line to buy a cup of coffee, nothing you can do. You just stand and look at other people. But now we're always able to be mentally engaged, and we don't get the natural mental breather. And this is the inserting those mental spaces into the day, isn't it? Which it reminds me, I sometimes have ideas for sermon illustrations when I'm going for a run. 20, 30 minutes, and it's like, ideas popping into my head because I don't know why. I mean,
I actually get them after sleep sometimes. You ever get that?
Yeah, well, you know why that is. That's because your brain is still processing the thoughts while you're asleep. And pianists have noticed this. There's loads of research been done on this. There's a pianist who spoke to a sleep scientist and explained what happens. Be working on a really tricky passage you can't quite get right.
Right.
Maybe working on it for 2 or 3 hours one evening. Can't get it right. Goes to bed, wakes up the next morning and plays it straight away. First time. And the reason is because your brain is processing even during the downtime. So again, just having a nap. If you only getting 5 hours sleep a night, well, maybe you need to change that. But if your schedule allows for it, again, maybe Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, I always think it's a shame to have a nap on Sunday afternoon. Maybe we should talk about how best to use the Lord's Day another time. Let's save that.
Yeah.
But actually, it's much more constructive. Again, maybe back to our gamer friends. If you really need to unwind, we'll just have a nap.
Sure.
Or actually unwind, or try going for a walk. Just clear your head and see if that doesn't help better.
Yep, absolutely.
I think we're almost at the end of this email chain. I shoot once a month. Fishing, shooting, general homesteading, pickleball. I thought that's interesting. I think, go shooting once a month. Yeah, that's manageable. Not 3 times a week. Not if you're a dad. It's just
probably
where
not.
Where are you going to do it?
Yeah. Again, you got property to do it on.
Yeah, and the general homesteading. I just think that's fascinating. As there's a way, and I noticed it last night. I'll tell you, we
got a lot of cooks, by the way, in our.
Oh, I didn't mention
among
that.
Our congregation, don't we? Grill masters, maybe.
Grill masters, people who smoke things.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's a way of turning a task into something that's fulfilling.
Absolutely.
And it's the attitude you take to it. I had to put the Christmas tree lights up last night, and then I had the obligatory half hour. I
saw you post about that.
Obligatory half hour searching for the timer switches, which had evaporated.
You put it with the Christmas tree.
Yeah, I know. I can never find them. Anyway, I found them eventually.
Okay.
But it's interesting. It's kind of late by the time I finished. But I thought, I've got that done. It's a little tiny thing. It's nothing. It took a couple of hours fiddling around with all the cables and stuff. But once it's done, there was this sense of having turned something which was a job into something where there's a little tiny sense of accomplishment. No, it's not much,
Yeah.
right? You put the Christmas tree lights up. But if we can do the same with all of the other tasks that we've got to do around the house, you've got
Right.
to do your yard. I need to find a way of connecting up a new gas pipe to our outside grill because it's leaking. So if you hear a loud explosion from North Fort Worth, you'll know why.
Yeah.
Maybe get a specialist in. But turning the tasks we need to do into an opportunity to relieve stress. I think that's, if you can get that.
And if you can do it with your kids,
If you can do it with your kids,
all
that's
the more.
great. Because you're cultivating a family life which is simultaneously, it's relationally rich.
Yep.
Because kids, it's productive. Everything is in order. You're working hard, but you're not working hard in a way where you're getting stressed about it because you're doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And we're taking control of our attitude to what we have to do.
Absolutely.
Cultivating the right attitude.
Yeah.
Final words for us, Pastor Shaw.
Yeah, I was hugely encouraged, honestly,
Yeah,
by
me too.
this conversation, because our guys have a number of hobbies, variety. They show a great deal of maturity, and I just know.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of one guy in particular who lives a good ways out, and I mean, he involves his kids with
a whole bunch of things.
Oh yeah, like slaughtering animals. Not my speed, but hey.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if I started doing that.
No, I'm not doing that here in Benbrook. So
I
don't have any animals anyway.
Yeah. My final exhortation, I think, would be, if the question resonates with you, what can you do to relieve stress? Try something new and embodied, physical, that you've not done before. Doesn't need to be expensive. Get a wood carving set and some chisels, or just go around the house, and a pet obsession of mine, clean and align all the little covers over the electrical outlets.
There you
go. But work around the property if you have a property to look after. Something to do with cooking, something to do with something creative and physical.
Yep.
Especially if you spend 10 hours a day sitting at a desk. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great questions. Guys, love you guys very much. And this was a really thought-provoking discussion. I hope our contribution to it has been helpful to you. We'll be seeing you in a couple of days, by which time, well, that will happen before this podcast comes out next week. But that'll do for us, I think. Lord bless you. Bye for now.